As of the time of this video, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been going on for 18 years, with around 38 feature films and more than 20 live-action and animated TV shows. A large number of characters have been introduced over the years, each having varying degrees of impact on the wider universe. And since this is a major superhero franchise, you're bound to get a whole bunch of costumes and suits worn by the various heroes and villains who have made appearances over the years. So I thought I'd highlight some of the best costumes that have appeared since Phase 1. I'm talking about the cream of the crop, designs that practically set the standard for how comic book suits should be brought to life in live action going forward. What better way to start things off than by talking about the suit shown in the most recent MCU project? I'm just gonna come out and say it, the suit in Spider-Man Brand New Day is the best live action Spider-Man suit we've gotten, period. It dethroned the design that was used by Andrew Garfield's Peter in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. You know, that one movie some people try to gaslight themselves into thinking is good for some reason. Throughout the Home trilogy, Tom Holland's Spider-Man was often clowned on by certain fans for the over-reliance on Stark technology, and for not predominantly wearing a suit he crafted with his own resources during most of his MCU appearances prior to Brand New Day, as well as how some of his previous suits were heavily reliant on CGI, like in Captain America Civil War, where the visual effects team digitally altered the suit used during production to better handle the fabric and enhance the character's overall look and expressiveness, or in Homecoming, where they had a completely practical suit but used visual effects to clean it up by painting out zippers or getting rid of any wrinkles. There were definitely moments of needless CGI painting over previous suits outside of just wanting it to look cleaner on film. So it was a nice change of pace to see a fully materialized suit where you could see the fabric and wrinkles in detail, which translated beautifully on screen.
Yep. I'm jacking off to that.
The spider emblem on his chest is a lot bigger than the ones on the Homecoming and Far From Home suits. No weird black lines on the sides in an attempt to, I guess, break up the red throughout the suit. The black web pattern is more prominent and much less faint compared to the previous main designs. The new suit serves as an homage to the ones worn by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's renditions of the Wall Crawler.
That was an homage to Tobey's and Andrew's designs. We kind of created a spider child of all three costumes.
This is a costume that Peter handcrafted himself with a sewing machine, and was even able to create his own advanced AI system to aid him in his crime-fighting activities. It comes with bigger mechanical web shooters, which I guess Peter doesn't need anymore since he can now control his mutation, and now has organic webbing. Brand New Day is the first MCU Spider-Man film where Peter wears only one suit throughout the entire movie. No unnecessary changes just to sell toys, we love to see it. It's a vast improvement over the suit Peter wore in Civil War. Don't think that iteration was bad, it's a solid design. But he didn't have the best look out of all the heroes in that film because to me, Black Panther had the best costume in Civil War. To this day, it remains the best look for the character in the MCU, regardless of who's bearing the mantle. What surprised me was how every frame of Black Panther in Civil War was covered in CGI. With how it was presented, you would have thought they didn't do many touch-ups on the practical suit that was worn by Chadwick Boseman on set. The costume had a triangular pattern infused in the design that represented the sacred geometry of Africa. The visual development team wanted the costume to have enough texture and detail so that it wouldn't look like a dude dressed in a leotard. They made it look as though it were woven together in ways that would be extremely difficult to replicate in a practical setting, honing in on the idea that what's on screen comes from a culture or civilization that's far more advanced than our own. I very much prefer the practicality of the Civil War suit over the version introduced in the 2018 Black Panther movie, especially with them replacing the practical helmet with nanotech. I know the nanotech serves a better purpose in the field and is more efficient, but still.
My design.
Functional, but old. Hey, people are shooting at me. Wait, let me put on my helmet.
The first helmet had carvings that were placed in such a precise way to make it look like it would require a high level of technology to achieve. The eyes resembled that of a cat's eye catching light at nighttime, giving off a subtle metallic look. It made T'Challa as the Black Panther look a lot more menacing when compared to his future appearances. For the next installment in the Black Panther franchise, I think it'd be cool if T'Challa Jr. had some sort of a cape, with every bearer of the Black Panther mantle we've seen so far in the MCU having their own unique style and design. We only saw it for one scene, but the Panther suit worn by T'Chaka in the 1992 flashback was clean as hell, I can't even lie. With the gold accents, visible tactical chest, and African sash wrapped around him, T'Challa's pops was showing folks how how to look clean as a superhero all the way back then.
Okay, that boy clean, man.
No, for real.
It would be absolutely criminal to list a handful of the best MCU suits without mentioning at least a few suits worn by the genius, billionaire, playboy philanthropist himself, Tony Stark. Jon Favreau and company for the first Iron Man wanted a practical suit to be used as a basis so that the special effects could be more honest. Marvel concept artists Phil Saunders and Ryan Meinerding took inspiration from the Extremis story arc, which was depicted in the first 6 issues of the Invincible Iron Man comic series from 2004, when developing Iron Man's base design. Stan Winston Studio crafted the suits seen in the first film, with the Mark II and III suits being constructed from about 70 individual pieces. The concept designers wanted the suit to look as real as possible, taking into account things like how each joint would function or how realistically the finish is rendered. The studio built a variety of mechanical props such as Tony's flight boots and arm thrusters. Industrial Light and Magic created a digital rendering of the suit to aid in fight sequences and the movement of the individual components. The scenes of Tony putting on the Iron Man suits throughout Phase 1 are probably some of, if not the best suit-up montages in any live-action superhero film. Moments like the suitcase scene in Iron Man 2 when Tony first went up against Whiplash stand out in particular. I've always been a fan of the Mark VI in that movie, with the triangle shape on the chest and the shoulders not popping out as much when compared to Mark III. The Hulkbuster in Age of Ultron I thought was another well-executed translation from the source material, where the concept artist wanted it to look more like a power lifter rather than a more athletic build like the traditional Iron Man armor, in order to convey the power and mass it needed to fight the Hulk. They mostly drew inspiration from the cover of the Invincible Iron Man issue 12. Thankfully, Iron Man wasn't the only Avenger to have a suit that implemented iconic comic designs in a way that looked real and practical on screen, because Captain America had a few bangers of his own in the MCU.
You gonna wear that?
No. If you're gonna fight a war, you gotta wear a uniform.
For Cap's main suit in the first Avenger, the goal was for it to look like something that could have been made in the 1940s, rather than simply going for a complete one-to-one translation of the comic design. This was embodied by using leather for the straps and belt, incorporating metal buckles and not having too tight a fit, but they were still able to utilize the iconic colors throughout. For the Winter Soldier movie, the goal was to tone things down and not have any bright or vibrant superhero costumes. Captain America is now a Special Forces operative under S.H.I.E.L.D., taking on Black Ops missions, so for the stealth suit, the Russo brothers wanted to make a traditional Cap suit work under tactical guidelines by minimizing the stars and stripes and elements of his history. It was more of a military-grade aesthetic with a stretched fabric for improved mobility, similar to Kevlar. The helmet is also a vast improvement over what he wore in the 2012 Avengers film. Its design was mainly inspired by what Steve wore in the Steve Rogers Super Soldier miniseries. Since he essentially became the leader of the Avengers in Age of Ultron after the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D., the designers wanted to bring back the stars and stripes, while also keeping the tactical nature of the stealth suit, incorporating a darker blue than the one used in the first Avengers. Tony gave upgrades to some members of the Avengers, with Cap's shield getting rid of the straps on the back in favor of attaching magnetically to his arm.
Oh, actually, he's the boss. I just pay for everything and design everything and make everyone look cooler.
It took a while, but I'm glad they decided to give Cap the scales across his chest in Endgame, showing what the character could look like in his true form in the context of the MCU at the time. For Sam Wilson as Captain America, I was very surprised by how comic accurate they went in the finale of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. When the Wakandans gave him a new suit, I was expecting it to be another militarized costume that was visibly weaved together with vibranium, but no. The colors and overall design were ripped straight from the comics themselves. I think it's kinda lame how they changed it just so Sam could look more like Steve in Brave New World and Avengers Doomsday. He had only one movie as Captain America and they're already hoeing this man's uniqueness and visual style. When it comes to the most comic accurate designs seen in a single MCU film, Deadpool and Wolverine might take the lead given the sheer number of homages and Easter eggs sprinkled throughout. The overall look of the Deadpool suit from the Fox films was basically kept intact, with the original being a bit rough around the edges since Wade Wilson didn't have an insane amount of money. So you can see some stitching and straps that you might find in military tactical surplus stores. The one from Deadpool and Wolverine is cleaner, thanks to him having access to the TVA's resources, including being provided with adamantium katanas. The red is also more vibrant compared to his previous suit. There's the famous montage of Deadpool running into different variants of Wolverine in search of a replacement anchor being for his universe, since his Wolverine died at the end of Logan. This gave the creative team the freedom to insert insert a bunch of comic references, including a variant of Wolverine wearing the brown and tan suit designed by artist John Byrne. We only saw it for one short scene, but it's honestly my favorite live action suit for the character. The director of visual development at Marvel Studios at the time wanted to make it as comic accurate as possible, but also had to come up with a simpler take so that the costume could be built more easily, since it was only going to be used for a quick cameo. Seeing the yellow and blue on the big screen was something people had anticipated for literal decades, and the one in Deadpool and Wolverine combined a couple of comic designs of the same color scheme, which included elements from the classic version and the astonishing X-Men design by John Cassidy. Thankfully, they didn't shy away from the white eyes on the cowl due to the fear of it potentially looking bad on camera. If they can pull it off for Wolverine's first comic accurate suit in live action, there's no excuse for the DCU Batman, I'm just saying. Wanting to be faithful extends to some of the other characters in the film. The costume department had no intent on changing Gambit's design from the comics, and they wanted to replicate it exactly, down to the color pattern and design of the chest plate.
For Gambit, we just basically decided like, alright, we're just gonna do exactly what he looks like in the comics. Down to like the pattern on the chest plate to like the headgear.
Marvel films are finally giving justice to the designs of the X-Men characters across the board, from heroes like Wolverine to James Marsden's Cyclops in Avengers Doomsday. And they most definitely have to deliver with the designs for the upcoming X-Men reboot. The new Cyclops gets to rock a dope outfit and more importantly, gets to interact with both Sadie Sink as Jean Grey and Samara Weaving as Emma Frost. Wow, congratulations Kit Connor, I'm so happy for you.
It's supposed to be me.
The amount of detail that goes into making these costumes, along with the dedication to enhancing specific visual elements that often go unnoticed by the average person, really is talent at its finest. I can especially appreciate the attention to detail that went into the two prominent suits seen in the Moon Knight Disney Plus series. Moon Knight is known for his dissociative identity disorder, and the personalities that receive a good amount of characterization and screen time are given their own unique supersuits, with the original Mark Spector personality having the Moon Knight suit and Stephen Grant going by Mr. Knight. The visual development team wanted the Moon Knight suit to embody something that was ancient and Egyptian, with an outlook that made him look like a warrior. They avoided a tactical look to ensure that Mark Spector didn't look like other superheroes in the universe. The director wanted to incorporate the mummy bandage concept while also keeping it modern. Hidden hieroglyphs were incorporated throughout the costume and cape, which were printed onto the fabric and represented Khonshu's oath of vengeance. The main suit itself consisted of over 800 separate pieces. The added texture to the colors was meant to ensure that the white never appeared flat on screen, while also adopting some of the design elements from the comics. The standard suit Moon Knight wears is a big departure from the source material in terms of its functionality, as it comes with magical properties that allow Mark Spector to summon it at will, instead of it being a practical suit he made himself. The ceremonial armor gives him enhanced strength and durability, a healing factor, the ability to spawn an infinite amount of projectiles from his chest, and even the ability to fly. I'm also glad they didn't shy away from Mr. Knight's aesthetic and were able to pull off his three-piece suit.
I do look sharp though.
In an effort to create a full face mask that wasn't too similar to the Spider-Man or Deadpool masks worn on screen, the designers incorporated an underlying theme of the character's duality and split personality, with the stitching representing his struggle to hold himself together. Egyptian artifacts were incorporated into the textures and details of the cloth itself. He even has custom-made buttons featuring the Khonshu symbol on the vest and arms. There was a time when superhero costumes in live action were often criticized for leaning too heavily into the tactical route, with suits being over-designed or incorporating muted colors because the creatives were embarrassed by the source material and thought comic accurate suits wouldn't translate well on screen. So I'm glad we seem to be shifting away from that mentality across the board, with more vibrant, faithful renditions of costumes making more of a prominent appearance in Marvel TV shows and films. I fully expect the costume designers and visual development team to remain locked in throughout the Mutant Saga. There are no more excuses at this point for superhero media in general. We got a 10 out of 10 Spider-Man suit, the yellow and blue suit for Wolverine, Superman got the classic trunks again, the future of superhero costumes is looking bright.